Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into an epic detective journey through the completely unwritten chapters of human history. We are going to look far, far back in time. I'm talking way before the first kings, the first empires, or even the very first written word.
So how exactly do we piece together our own story before anyone even thought to invent writing? It's the ultimate cold case, really. It forces us to look way beyond books, and instead, we have to learn how to read the earth itself. I mean, how do you trace the footsteps of our earliest ancestors when they didn't leave behind a single diary or carved inscription? Well, they left behind different kinds of clues, and figuring them out is honestly one of the most thrilling scientific endeavors humanity has ever taken on.
Get this, because it's absolutely mind-boggling. Over 99% of our entire history as a species has literally zero written records. Just think about that for a second. Everything we usually consider recorded history, all the wars, the coronations, the ancient texts, that all fits into less than 1% of the time humans and our ancestors have actually been on Earth. For that massive 99%, we have to rely entirely on the material stuff they left behind, the artifacts and the fossils.
And honestly, even when we do start finding evidence of writing, it doesn't just magically hand us all the answers. We have these fascinating physical clues, like this ancient Harappan seal from the Sindhu-Sarasvati civilization. It proves that even when early writing popped up around 5,000 years ago, it can still remain a tightly locked secret today. This pictographic script, often called the Sindhu Lipi, has actually never been deciphered. No one can read it. It's a literal ancient mystery staring right back at us.
Section 1. History before written words.
Since we can't read their words, we've got to read their world. Enter archaeologists. They are our lead time detectives, meticulously unearthing stone tools and buried bones to basically reverse engineer how our earliest ancestors survived. By carefully digging through layers of earth, which is kind of like turning the pages of a book, but in reverse, they uncover discarded tools, the leftovers of ancient meals, and old habitats. It all tells the incredible story of early human adaptation.
And out in the field, buried fossils are pretty much the holy grail of evidence. They act like biological time capsules. We're talking about the preserved remains, traces, or even just impressions of ancient life that have literally turned to stone over time. When an early human ancestor died and their remains got buried under layers of earth over millions of years, those bones slowly fossilized. They are the undeniable physical proof of who came before us.
Moving right along to Section 2. The evolution of us.
Let's look at the primary suspects in our evolutionary lineup, tracking the physical changes in our ancestors' biology over millions of years. Check out the rugged shape of the Homo habilis skull on the left. This guy was the handyman, the pioneer who started making the very first stone chopper tools in Africa around 2 to 6 million years ago. Now, compare that to Homo erectus on the right, the upright ancestor. You can see they had a slightly different cranial shape, and they were actually the first intrepid explorers to leave Africa, carrying much more advanced hand axes and cleavers with them.
Now, on the left here, we've got Homo neanderthalensis, who lived in Europe and Southwest Asia. But look really closely at how the facial features gradually straighten out towards the Homo sapien skull on the right. That's us, modern humans. You are literally watching millions of years of evolution play out right before your eyes. And the wild part? Out of all these incredible evolutionary steps, we are the only human species still kicking around on Earth today.
Section 3. The Stone Age Eras.
So as our bodies evolved, so did our toolkits. We weren't just changing physically, our brains were working overtime, engineering much better ways to survive. This timeline tracks our ancestors' major tech upgrades, taking us from the basic hunting of the Paleolithic all the way up to the Chalcolithic age. That was the huge pivotal moment when humans first started using copper right alongside stone. Each of these eras represents a massive, massive leap in human brainpower and our mastery over the environment.
Here's a really crucial takeaway. The environment totally dictates innovation. Around 12,000 years ago, during the Mesolithic era, the Earth's climate actually warmed up, melting ice sheets and expanding habitable lands. Our ancestors adapted brilliantly by creating microliths. These were tiny, razor-sharp stone blades, and they even invented the bow and arrow. This tech upgrade allowed them to hunt small game and gather aquatic foods so efficiently that it sparked what was essentially the very first massive human population boom.
Section 4. The Neolithic Farming Revolution.
That dramatic population boom, it set the stage for what is arguably the biggest game changer in all of human history. Step by step, the warmer climate allowed humans to observe plant cycles. Instead of constantly chasing their dinner as hunter-gatherers, humans figured out how to control it.
They started cultivating crops and domesticating animals like sheep, goats, and cattle. This was brilliant because it firmly anchored them to permanent, thriving villages. For the first time ever, humanity actually had a surplus of food. And you can really see the spectacular results of this shift. Take a look at sites like Mehrgarh in the Indian subcontinent, located on the Bolan River, dating all the way back to 7000 BCE. Just imagine walking through this early settlement. It had cozy, sun-dried brick houses, massive granaries to store all that extra food, and huge fields growing wheat and barley. This wasn't just basic survival anymore, folks. This was the very foundation of society as we know it today.
Section 5. Rise of Early Civilizations.
So what happens when you have a surplus of food? You get free time. And that free time led straight to the dawn of metallurgy and massive urban centers. Once you don't have to desperately hunt for your next meal every single day, you can actually become a craftsman. The introduction of copper tools around 4000 BCE supercharged agricultural productivity, launching society into the Bronze Age and eventually giving birth to the magnificent Sindhu-Saraswati civilization by 2600 BCE. We see an absolute explosion in specialized crafts here. Lapis lazuli ornaments, uniquely painted pottery, and those beautifully intricate seals.
As these early cities totally flourished, they developed early forms of writing to handle their trade and administration. And this is exactly where history literally splits into the known and the totally unknown. It creates this fascinating contrast between ancient scripts that we completely understand and those we simply don't.
For example, take the later Brahmi script, the one famously formalized by Emperor Ashoka around the 3rd century BCE. Because modern scholars actually managed to crack this code, it acts like a direct historical voice. It allows us to read their exact history, their laws, and their thoughts, literally word for word.
But then we come right back to this. The pictographic script of the much earlier Harappans remains a stubbornly locked door. Despite us having thousands of these seals, the script remains completely undeciphered. It leaves us to rely entirely on those silent archaeological clues we've explored today, the fossils, the tools, the foundations of houses, just to understand their daily lives.
Which brings us to a really tantalizing final thought. Until we finally break this ancient code and give a voice back to the Harappans, you've got to wonder, what incredible stories of human survival, culture, and innovation are just waiting for us to discover? The Earth has offered up its physical clues, but the true words of our ancient ancestors are still out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting to be read. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through our unwritten past.